This episode was recorded in the Sydney Borough studio, and you are listening to the Wholesome Way podcast, hosted by Alexander Lobb. Please keep in mind, everything shared in this podcast is for inspiration only and shouldn't be taken as medical or professional health advice. If you're making changes to your health routines or lifestyle, please check in with a qualified health professional first. Nothing beats some quality time face-to-face. And now that I'm back in Sydney, I've organised a launch party for the podcast community on Sunday, the 16th of November, 2025. Join me and other like-minded listeners of the podcast to connect in person, share wholesome conversations, have a few laughs, and be part of a growing tribe of wonderful humans exploring ways to live with more joy, balance, and purpose than ever before. Together, we'll celebrate Season 1, get a sneak peek of Season 2, and take part in a few guided moments of bliss through meditation, movement, and reflective writing. Book your spot now on Eventbrite via the link in the description, and I'll see you there. And now, on with the episode. Josh Ferdinand, my friend, welcome to the Wholesome Way podcast, man. So good to have you on.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Obviously, we've been friends for, is it 3 years now? I think we met in Sydney back at
Yeah, I
F45.
think, it might be, about 3 years now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we had a lot of cool chats, a lot of wholesome chats, I might add, which is, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on this podcast today. Obviously, you have a very, very colorful background that I love to delve into and get your 2 cents on the world of health and balance and education as well. I said to you before, from ambulance to the classroom. I think that'll be a good starting point as a framework for today. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's actually a bit more full circle than that. I think I started in the classroom primary and then went full circle. So education,
Of course. Yeah.
healthcare, and then back into education. And I guess it's always cyclical, isn't it? Because everything comes back to education.
Mm.
Ultimately, how educated you are will determine so many factors in your overall life, regardless of the background you come from.
Mm.
It is your one opportunity to change your situation. And however you want it, even if you think, I don't like school, I don't like education, you can't really say you don't like education because you're going to want to learn something at some point in your life, even to get to the point, having a baby, even to get to the point where you're learning to control your GI tract and how your bowel movements go, right? Because, when you've got a newborn baby, they don't know what to do. So as soon as they take on board food and they've got an immature system, they start feeling it inside them and they just start squeezing it. They're like this. And sometimes it comes out the poop end, and sometimes it just spits up and comes out as like vomit because they can't control which way it's going. They're just
Absolutely. No,
and it's brilliant. And ever since that phase, you're learning something. So that's where education begins, and it starts with your parents teaching you, what's good, and then we continue it from there on.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's something that I've learned a lot along my journey is just the importance of continuing to learn. Doesn't matter what it is, but that is our nature. It's to learn, and one of the phrases that comes up a lot with my guests and on the podcast and just speaking with people actually is that I only know that I know nothing. and for some people, especially me in the early days, it's hard to admit that, I think, because naturally I think a lot of us want to be know-it-alls. I don't know if you agree with that, but
it was one of the hardest things to try and tell undergraduate students, right, what to write. Because they're doing a dissertation and they're just like, I just need to know what to write. You said I could do this or I could do that. Which is it? And I'm like, well, it's either, and I don't want to be like the cat in Alice in Wonderland. But at the end of the day, I do feel a bit Cheshire Cat, right? Because you are Alice and there's no final destination. Both roads could get you there. I can't tell you which is the right one to take because that's your journey. I can help you on the road you choose. Which one you choose is up to you. And that's where they have difficulty, right? Because everyone wants to know, oh, but which one's going to get me the best grade? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. You know, and you will discover.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. You've got to find this. You've got
Yeah.
to find this out for yourself. And you know what? If you take the wrong path and you get a lower grade, you can maybe use that next time. Maybe take a different path. But you've always got options. You know, whether it's in personal life, whether it's in your professional life, and whether it's in your education, always got options.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I think that's a really good opening. I think for today's conversation, which I've been very much looking forward to, in the framework of, as we said, health, education, and weaving that into the wholesome way theme of reconnecting with what really matters for our health and well-being, and trying to find our purpose in life and our true path, our wholesome way. So I think yeah, that'll be today's goal, I guess, to try and weave that in and have a free flowing conversation with you, man.
It's my lofty goal to try and find our purpose in life. I don't
Well,
think we're going to achieve that one, but
actually,
we'll see.
it's I think it's all connected. So I think naturally we'll find ourselves going that way, and yeah, we'll see where we go. So, bit of a background for yourself. Obviously, you were a primary school teacher initially.
Yep, that's where I started.
You started. You're a paramedic. You've been a lecturer in paramedicine for many years. You're a paramedic in Australia. I think that's when we first met. You were working for St. John's Ambulance.
That's right. Yeah,
Um, and more recently in the academic space, you started a company called Atomic Academia, which aims to bring the academic world of everything basically into a more easily digestible format for children and adults, right? Just for everyone.
yeah. That's it. It's
Yeah.
for everyone. It's because what was happening in academia and academic science was super interesting, but it's in an ivory tower behind flamboyant language that no one can really access, and probably presented in ways that nobody wants to really read. And what I found fascinating is no one's sharing this really with the world.
Mm,
I'm surprised the universities haven't found a way to dynamically express themselves like this. So I set up this Atomic Academia in a way as an academic to try and bridge that gap between what we're doing in academia and actually everyday life,
mm,
right? Because there's enough negativity in the news, there's enough information about immediately what's happening. We're finding out more about what's happening in foreign lands than actually what's happening in our own universities.
mm.
It's crazy. Like, if there's progress, if we've made discoveries, we should be sharing them. And nature shares obviously the most extreme stuff and the tie in science, but we're not exploring all of the other things that the student body is doing and all the wonderful stuff that happens at university. I had a great time at university when I was there as a student. And it's been a really enjoyable place to be. Campus life was great.
Mm.
Now, that's shifted a little bit with modern times, I think. Universities are now trying to find their place in a more modern world where degrees aren't necessarily um, going to produce as a more stable income. And in fact, people are now finding that you can get quite a lot of income by doing things like trades and then building a business from your trade and scaling that up much faster than if you go and get a degree and get a career that way.
Mm.
Now, there are obviously differences to each, but it does seem like the old school thought of everyone go to university doesn't really apply so much anymore. I was
Mm.
encouraged to go to university when I was at high school.
Mm.
I was in a category of people where my parents did. My mum did a diploma at university. My parents didn't really go to university and utilize their diplomas or degrees in careers. So I was in a program they facilitated in the UK called Aim Higher. They wanted to try and promote people into higher education. So we went on tours of the universities back then and to see the sort of buildings they were in
Mm.
and the sort of things the students would say to us and what we'd be able to do. We used to really promote it, heavily promote it. I think it was to prevent them becoming what is known as NEET, not in education or training. Um, or not in education, employment, or training, which means they're sort of these sort of 16 to 24-year-olds that are just not doing anything,
Hmm.
you know, which is risky for any country. So I was always one of those people that they didn't know, the state wasn't sure about how I was going to turn out as a child, right? So, oh, we
Heard
don't
that
know how this
before.
kid's, yeah, we don't know how this kid's going to go. So, try and encourage him to go to university, send him on these Duke of Edinburgh things. He might be trouble, he might not. We don't know. And long story short, I actually took a gap year because when I was a teenager, when I was a child, my biggest dream was professional wrestling. One of my heroes at the time, I was a kid, right? So I was inspired by entertainment and the hype and everything behind it. And Dwayne Johnson was a fantastic entertainer for children. Back when I was watching him, I was enthralled as a little 13-year-old, all the way up to 16. Like, oh, he's brilliant. Like, the rock, the eyebrow, all of it. Um, and yeah, I did a year actually touring as a professional wrestler in the UK at 18. It was an interesting year. Best of British Wrestling was the company. We did a little tour, made virtually no money. Actually, had to spend money on traveling and accommodation, but it was fun. I had a great time. And then I went to uni at the end of that gap year because I was like, this doesn't earn any money in the UK. There's no, the opportunity to get into a tryout to join the WWE was really, really far fetched. If you think wrestling is big, it's massive, but it's a lot more competitive and a lot more tricky to get into from the UK than acting is, which is obviously what I went into from drama school. I did that for a little while. That was good fun, but again, didn't earn income like I was expecting to. And I had this perception that having a career was the way I needed to go. I needed a career. I needed a steady job to get income to ensure that I would get growth over the long term.
Mm.
And in some cases, that works for some people. They're happy to get into a career and spend 30 or 40 years building up their savings pot, being frugal, and then cashing it in retirement and living it out like that. I've seen this pattern repeated time and time again. By the time I was sort of 19, I'd seen people go through this process. Back when I was 19, you could still lose your home for social housing. So people would go through that process, grandparents would go through that process, then need social care, be forced to sell their home, use all of their pension equity to pay for that social care, and pretty much be left with nothing to pass down to the next generation. So I thought, is that the whole life cycle that I wanted to go through in a professional career? And it took me a long time to get to that point, right? So I did teaching, and then I was so focused on actually teaching, I wasn't really focused on the economics of it. I was actually just enjoying being with the kids. It was a year 5 class, my first class, so you never forget. Absolute brilliant, but there was a lot of pressure, a lot of work. The workload for primary school teachers is insane. Hats off to anyone that has that career. I admire you and thank you for what you do. You're helping ensure the next generation of kids get a good education and enjoy learning and love it. And the best thing about that is they get to do a range of subjects, and it's super fun.
Yeah. No, shout out to the teachers. I couldn't agree more. I think there needs to be so much more support, not only financially, but just as a community into our teachers. Into education, because we're essentially creating the next generation. Like, how do you want to bring those people up? Like, what world do you want to create and help them create? So yeah, hats off to obviously you, man, and all the teachers listening today. But
Yeah, definitely. And it's a job. The teachers that listen will know they buy things out of their own pocket because you're that passionate about your class. Bearing in mind that thing that you buy is only going to last a year. You're not earning a huge income, but you will buy things like paintbrushes and papers and things like this out of your own pocket to bring into that class. Games. I bought an ant's nest so they could see how ants work and how that operates. And you bring that in so they can have enjoyment and love. And they're actually doing that from their own personal money. So that sort of shows what a lot of these people are like. There's a lot of good hearts out there. And they work really, really hard. So amazing job. And that's one of the reasons I can do it. It's really hard. And I was doing maybe 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. They say that you're going to get time off over the weekends, but actually I was just using that to catch up on the extra marking because year five, they can write a lot. So there's a sort of 10-year old. So they can write a page of A4. They can probably do about 100 maths questions in an hour. So taking that home, that's probably about 2 hours a pupil of marking each one. And, I won't do the maths on all of it, but basically the amount of hours that you have to put in is far in excess of 40. It's like more like CEO level if you actually want to be good at it. You're going through because you need constant correction. If you're going to grow, you need you need to improve that. And they need to be done in the right way for each child. So it's a lot of work. And I stopped enjoying it. So, and I recognized it not when I was in the midst of it. I actually had a pivotal moment that gave me this first career switch. I went over to the Caribbean. My grandfather died, and he had his funeral in the Caribbean. So I flew over to the Caribbean. I think it was 2014, and over there I went to a few Caribbean islands actually when I was over there, just because of the nature of the flight. Beautiful islands, absolutely lovely part of the world. And I'd love to live there. So I went to this Caribbean island, St. Vincent, where my grandfather was born and where he died. And on St. Vincent, where I got to eventually, I met a group of people from Liverpool Med School. They were on their elective year. So basically in med school, they get a fifth year. And if they do an elective, they can sometimes go to different parts of the world to experience world medicine. And they were there at St. Vincent Hospital. And we just got talking. We just bumped into each other. So obviously, small like Caribbean island, you just sort of bump into each other, and not too many English people over there. So there we are. And I remember them very well. And we had such a great laugh. And we just were talking about science and biology and stuff, and a few particular people that I really connected well with over there. And there were actually also some dentists over there that we eventually met up with. I didn't fancy dentistry, but I did really get into talking about biology, science, and how much I enjoyed that. And I thought, being a primary school teacher, you obviously do like a variety of subjects because you have to. But I thought that's probably where I want to be. Human bodies is fascinating, but human biology is incredible, and I can help people in a whole different way. So I came back to the UK and I was like, how am I going to take on board this path to medical practice? I've already done my degree, so I can't get support from the state to do another degree. I can't afford to do 5 years of medicine in the UK. I actually went to Ukraine. I went to Ukraine in 2014. I went to Kharkiv at first, right up on that Russian border, believe it or not. And I drove down, I actually drove up to a little town called Sumy. There's a medical school in a little part of Ukraine called Sumy. And it was the cheapest medical school in Europe. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll come here to study medicine. I spent a few days there. I think it was nearly a week actually, just getting to know the town, getting to know the university. I found it really hard to find the right textbooks. And it turned out to be, I didn't like the environment. I felt a bit alien there. The pressure was interesting. I felt a bit alien. But the people were lovely. The Ukrainian people were lovely. I couldn't find where I was looking for, and one of the girls helped me out. And, I liked the people. The problem I had with the university was I couldn't find the English library. It wasn't easy to find. And I just thought, oh, this might be tricky. Ukrainian is a really tricky language. I don't know if you've ever seen it or tried it, but
I've heard it being spoken. Yeah, it's spoken. It's tricky.
Yeah, my French is basic, so my Ukrainian, it would take me forever. Let alone to learn something as highly specialized as medicine over there. But they said they taught it in English, and you know what? The cohort looked interesting. But I ended up dodging a bullet, right? Because I came back to the UK and I was like, economically, it's possible, but it would pretty much wipe me out to go and do that. And they didn't have the apprenticeship medicine program then. They had these routes into other careers. So they had paramedic, student paramedic role with the ambulance service. I was like, okay, that seems interesting. For some reason, I didn't want to go into nursing. I wanted to have a bit more of a dynamic approach than that, although nursing is quite a big career now. Um, and then I just took that role in the ambulance service December. Or I say I took it. I got it. So I had to interview and go through the selection process and be selected. But no, I achieved selection in that and ended up in SP21 and met a great group of people and never looked back. And actually, sort of long story short from that, I dodged a bullet because I would have been dragged into a terrible war. I would have still been there when that war started and it would have been insane.
Wow.
And I can't believe I've driven that border and I've been around all of that area that they're fighting over. And I could have just been there, just one decision. And again, that's one of those decisions, isn't it? I don't know which road will get you there, right? You can take either route at this point. There's a fork in the road. Which one are you going to take? I took this one. If I'd taken this one, I now see how that would have played out. And I'm like, wow, I took what I think is the right route.
Seems like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, since then, 2014, I started paramedicine December as a student paramedic and never looked back since. Here we are 11 years later. Can you believe that? Nearly 11 years of emergency medical service. And, I registered 2018 as a paramedic. So obviously there's a lot of training you have to do. And I was out as an EMT for a little while before dealing with 999 calls and seeing the public and seeing the inner workings of people's lives. It's fascinating to be in that privileged position where you are that resort of last call. People bring you into their home and allow you to see everything at its most interesting times. That was quite eye-opening.
I bet.
And then after a little career in that, so 5 years, 2019, end of 2019, I went to Australia and registered as a paramedic over there. Actually, sorry, it's beginning of 2020. I finished with the ambulance service and I went over there 2020. And then now that's even 5 years ago. It's time really flies, doesn't it? And when I was over there, obviously, we all know what happened in 2020. The world shut down for like 2 years. What an interesting time. And
especially as a paramedic as well, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what to do at that point because it was like every national government was like, you should go home, go back to your country of origin. Like,
of course,
that's the best place to be. And I was like, it doesn't make sense to get on a super long flight if there's this horrible disease traveling around. You want me to fly through India or Hong Kong? That doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, just go through 1 billion people to get home. It'll be fine. It seems like I'm going to spread it. I'll rather stay where there's like 20 million people. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And then obviously they expedited my application. Like, oh my gosh, paramedics here, great, keep them, have these benefits, and it was great. And I didn't realize this then. I had a great job with St John. I was working in Chatswood, Sydney, a sort of suburb in Sydney. People won't really know what that is if they know me, but Chatswood's a suburb in Sydney. It's a really nice little suburb with great access to the main CBD area. And I ended up working somewhere I could walk to. So I could walk to my station and I could walk home within 15 minutes. It was a split shift, so it had a bit of a downside to it. But looking back on it now, it's probably the best job I've had ever.
Wow.
So it's event-based. They gave me fringe tax benefits. So one of the great things about Australia, I mentioned it to you earlier, is this fringe tax benefit. So my accommodation and expenses for being in that community were tax-free, in addition to my tax-free allowance, because I'm serving the community. I think that's incredible. And I think every country should do something like that. And it was just, the income was good. The work-life balance was great. I was able to exercise the amount of times I wanted to. There wasn't a huge amount of pressure. There wasn't a huge amount of stress. And reflectively, that was where it was at. Of course, with my stupid brain, I was like, I'm bored. I want to make impact. I've got to make impact, right? And I had this desire to make impact. So I started writing for the Hornsby Kurungai Post out there, writing a little news column,
Did
little
you?
article on health and fitness.
I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
not know that.
yeah. I think
Good
I
on
think I'm
you.
in a few issues. They actually the Hornsby Kurungai Post closed because the lead journalist went to Sky, and then they made it into like a news pamphlet or something. So they downscaled it a little bit. It still goes out, but it's no longer a local newspaper like it was back then. And after doing that, I was like, right, okay, I'm making a little bit of impact. I'm writing these articles. I'm having a good time. I want to make more impact. So I start looking for a job like it's going to make bigger impact. Two options: either complete career switch again and go into finance, um, because economics ultimately makes huge changes to our society. Whether a bank lends to a business will decide whether or not it's going to open. The terms and conditions of that loan determine how good and thriving that business will be. So that retail banks do control quite a lot of stuff as well. So I was interested in finance. I was also interested in progressing my paramedicine career. So the next stage for me was to become a lecturer in paramedicine. So I started seeing those sort of roles advertised back home, and I thought, you know what, if we go back, that's a great way to bridge it back, step up in career, or what I thought was a step up in career. I actually now see it as a lateral move. But I thought that I'm going to make progress because it's a higher salary, it's a secure role, it's a long-term thing, and actually, coaching and being a lecturer is something that you could probably retire in as a career. It felt like it had that old school gravitas, and on top of it all, they've offered me Cambridge, so I get to come back and I get to be in Cambridge teaching paramedicine, and I had this fantasy that it's going to be incredible. We got there. We flew into the UK. We flew back into London, and then we travelled to Cambridge. Accommodation was super expensive. In fact, I remember the very first month we were there. I looked at the accommodation. So my take home pay was something around between 1,800 and 2,000 a month. The accommodation was £1,585 a month. That would leave me, if I was paying it entirely myself, I've got a partner, a wife, and we were splitting our income on expenses. But if I was to pay that entirely, that would left me with like £480. Then, of course, most people in the modern world know how much electricity and gas bills are to keep yourself warm and comfortable. Even if I could keep that at bare minimum, and water and council tax is another £100, by the way, so that would take me down to £380. Even if I could get my bills down to bare minimum of £80 a month, it's not realistic, but say I could get it down to that would leave me with £300 for food, travel, savings, and growth. Which over a year, if I was working there, and this is a one-bedroom flat in Cambridge, by the way. Over a year, if I was working there, I could save 3.6k per annum, and that would be if I saved every penny and didn't eat.
Wow. Yeah.
So
It's not
it just got to the
sustainable,
point,
is
like
it? Yeah.
it's not realistic. I was just like, what? How am I going to be able to do this in the long term? So we ended up moving out of Cambridge pretty rapidly, within 2 weeks, because it just wasn't going to work. We moved out, traveled in, and of course, I didn't have to be at the campus every day. I thought I'd be walking into campus and it would be a very different lifestyle. It's not the case. Even lecturing to some extent has become a hybrid role. So you're on campus when you're teaching, but you're not there when you're not. And as a result, it doesn't have this dynamic feel. And recently, the vice chancellor of that university has come out and said, "Oh, if you can, we want you to come into campus more. If you can, do it 3 times a week or more." Because, of course, with student numbers dwindling, staff not spending on food, they're starting to see it degrade. So I think university is a bell curve, and it's peaked, and it's going to come back down. And I don't think it will drop out, but it should reach a level where a lot of the courses that don't necessarily have economic value won't survive. And I'm not saying they don't have purpose, because I believe you should be able to study whatever you want. Like, why not? if you want to study something that's not going to lead to a career, astrology, even though that could potentially lead to a career, but then you should be able to do that just on the basis of the principle of learning. Metro Goldwyn Mayer had it for a little while. I think the phrase "arts for art's sake." And I think that's the point: is education for its sake. We want to learn because that's what we do, right?
Absolutely. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Josh. It's quite a journey. You've
Yeah.
been in so many different areas and industries and people, and yeah, just hats off to you, man, for having that. It sounds like, you're really sure that you want to make an impact, and being able to, it's very admirable, I think, to be able to keep true to that value and just keep trying things, and knowing that eventually, you're going to get to somewhere, and you're always trying to be better, the next day and the next week and the next month. So yeah, hats off to you, man. But
It's probably my ADHD.
still a good thing. It seems like. But I really wanted to dig into the current state of health and well-being from your lens, from your perspective, and everything that you've seen, especially being a paramedic, working in schools. You've really worked in the educational theoretical space, but you've also been on the front line. So I think you've had that benefit of seeing the world from so many different perspectives, especially in the world of health. And you've also just become a father recently, so congratulations. That's been amazing. So you've seen the health, the world of health through that lens as well as a father, which would probably be, I imagine, quite eye-opening, and in a different context, going through the hospitals, things like that. How do you see the current state of health and well-being in the Western world?
That's a big question. So I think individual health is, in some cases, really good. So for the first time ever, we've got a real focus on women's health and longevity. There's a lot of education out there for people's growth, and there's a lot of people into training and coaching. So from that perspective, we're doing well. And some individuals are thriving, and some communities are thriving. So I like to do park run. It grown and grown and grown. Sometimes I go there and it's so busy. Whereas, a few years ago, it's quite fairly quiet. So there's definitely been an explosion in personal health and well-being. Societal health and Anglo-American, so that kind of world health, it's waning, isn't it? So overall, you can see the people that are interested are focused, dedicated, and maintain a good standard of fitness. And even people that have generated a good life for themselves will try and maintain a certain standard of fitness. It's people that are struggling, or people that are close to the breadline, maybe that don't exercise so much. There's also an area of people that are closer to that breadline, possibly don't get the right nutrition that they should be getting, and the nutritional information that they're receiving isn't quite good enough, essentially. So just considering the sugars that you're intaking and the fats and things like that as good or bad isn't necessarily the only way to assess your diet and track your goals. And I think science-wise, we are at a great space. We now know that our gut microbiome impacts our entire health and is linked to it, and our gut physiology can impact our mental health. Like, our knowledge of that is at a new level, and we've never been here before, and it's incredible. And I think people are waking up to that. And we've had things like game changers and all of that about eating more responsibly. And that side of it is grand. But then when you go out and you actually need to grab something on the go still, in some cases, it's got a lot better. If you pick the right stores, you can get something quite healthy, whereas before that option wasn't available. Fast foods, other things, they're still around and they're still sort of thriving as well. Where I see trouble is the economic side of it. I think 1/3 of British children are in poverty and go to school without food. If you're starting your life like that, hungry, not well fed, you're not going to engage with education as well. It's going to consistently impact the rest of your life. And that's what worries me. I think the people that are able to do it can figure out their health really well. And actually, will thrive and can live a great life.
Mm.
Overall, as a society, there's a lot of people that aren't thriving, and maybe aren't going to be able to get out of that situation very easily. Uh, it's tricky to get up and have. It's a sort of self-fulfilling cycle, isn't it? It's tricky to get up and have energy when you're a slave. And I'm not saying that, we've got modern slavery of any kind, because people are reasonably well fed in the UK overall. But that's the extremists of it. Even if you're working the grind, it's that sort of Orwellian grind, isn't it? You're getting up, you've got enough gruel to get through your day, but not enough gruel to challenge the power. And that's, essentially the situation that I fear we're working our way towards. A society where you've got the feudal lords, people that are doing really well and actually life's great. And then you've got the people that are like, life's not good.
Yeah.
Totally. And that bit in the middle that we all existed in before, that's going like this, isn't
it? And then I think that's a really good point that you raise on being well fed, I think. And if we go deeper into that, there's also the issue of defining what defining well fed. Like, what does well fed actually mean? Like, I think, you might have access to food, you might have access to places to buy food, but how's that food been made?
Well, and, is it a UPF, right?
Yeah.
That's the other.
Like, how do we measure like what we're eating is good? I think one of the articles that I was reading from the Atomic Academia issues, which is that one, for anyone that's looking, was the BMI one. There was an article on, a dissertation.
Yeah, Rhubarb's article on BMI.
BMI,
yeah, that's a good one.
Misleading, the truth about weight, obesity, and fitness. And that really raises my eyebrows a little bit, because I don't know if the PTs, personal trainers, anyone in the health space are still talking about BMI, but this article is basically saying that you can't really trust BMI completely. And we were talking about before education and how important that is throughout life, especially for children, is to have access to this sort of information, where you're having the resources to think more critically about your health, about what you're eating, how the exercise that you're doing. It's just, I think, as you said, it's in an ivory tower, sort of no one gets to look at it. and there are so many amazing minds that are coming up with these ideas empirically and with solid evidence. It's mind-baffling. Why isn't that in schools?
Absolutely right. We should be spreading this information as widely as possible, and the conversation does a fairly good job at doing it. But there's other ways as well to get it physically into people's hands. The point that you make about BMI, it is still used in healthcare. It has a purpose as a baseline for a general population, because you can't do more substantial testing on everyone. But nowadays, BMI is so obsolete because you can scan people's morphology. So you can put them on a DEXA scanner, which is like a dual X-ray, and you can tell exactly what their body composition is. You can say that it's, if their BMI is over 30, but they are 60% muscle, 20% fat, happy days. Like, it's not a case of, like for like anymore. Some people do train really well and will be on either end of that BMI scale. And also some people are, people come in all shapes and sizes. It's great as a general overview, terrible for the individual.
Yeah, especially when you bring in the cultural aspect as well. I think this part of this article goes into it a little bit about once you traverse cultures, BMI becomes even more irrelevant because you have different ethnicities and races that actually have a different body makeup, a different body structure. So if you're trying to bring in, I think the example was taking the BMI into the context of Maoris in New Zealand. Like you try and measure their health off BMI, you'll get laughed at.
Yeah,
it's because it's just that their bone structure and their physical beings are completely different to that Western medicine, that Western theory that's come up with the BMI.
And that's the case of many things in Anglo-American and Western medicine. Is it's based on, the average white, generally male, or when we look at the sugar intake, so the stuff they print on labels for foods, that's based on the average white woman calorie intake. And actually, it's in some cases done on because it's done on a nominal basis. In some cases, well over. If you are 5'5", 2,000 calories is probably too much. If you go and do metabolic testing, you'll probably find your basal calorie rate is around 1,600. Like, so actually, if you haven't burnt over 200 calories that day and you take on 2,000 calories or more, you're in a 200 calorie surplus every day. Where are those calories going? Like, and it's weight loss. A lot of people like to simplify calorie in, calorie out. There are obviously more complex dynamic relationships than that, but ultimately, consuming an excess of calories is most definitely negative.
Definitely, we know that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You can consume a good amount of calories, right? If you're trying to grow and bulk, but if you're just consuming excess beyond what you're using and it's just sitting somewhere in your body, and you're doing that consistently over time, well, it would be like just putting extra fuel in your car and just letting it spill out every time. Eventually, it's going to do some damage to your paintwork, isn't it? It doesn't matter. I've got loads of money. I can keep filling it up.
Definitely. So, just on that point, on your, the state of health and well-being in the Western world, you've been a teacher, you've been a lecturer, and you've founded Atomic Academia in the education space. So how has this mix of roles shaped your perspective on health and well-being? How did you come to that sort of conclusion of the state of health and well-being?
I guess I've had an opportunity to have a holistic view of it, as well as being a citizen as well, and observing cultures around me. I find some of it quite entertaining and quite amusing, but I think Ricky Gervais puts it like the world, prospectively, looks like it's going to shit, doesn't it? Like there's wars everywhere, the economy's tanking, it's really hard to get any growth, the population's spiraling out of control, and it seems like there's a lot of people competing over finite resources. When actually there would be more abundance if it was shared. So that's my sort of citizen view. But actually, when I've been on the ground in schools, I've seen various things. I've seen kids that actually, do come from that lower socioeconomic status and how they end up interacting in school. I didn't just teach in the UK. I did a couple of schools in Australia too, a couple of primary schools over there, and they have exactly the same problem. They call it lower social economic groups. And it's exactly the same issue. There's usually Pacific Islanders that come from those groups, in where I was teaching, and they act out, because someone might knock them, and it just becomes an ongoing problem. So I've seen from that perspective how impactful, firstly, not having comfortable food because someone's mocking you for your food, someone's mocking you for your clothes, things like that, and how disaffected and disassociated those kids can be. Got to see a bit of joy as well. Obviously, kids learning stuff is a beautiful thing, and seeing how they grow and engage, it's incredible, and that's why many people love that profession. Paramedicine gave me an insight to lots of people's lives. Lots of people called 999 during my time in the ambulance service, and I got to see firsthand all of the different problems people struggle with, from mental health to socio to, in a lot of cases as well, economic, organizational skills, just general life skills, right? Because I think a lot of people reach that point where they move out of home and they're trying to adult, and actually, oh gosh, I've got all of these responsibilities and chores to do now on my own, and do I tidy up? Do I do this? Do I do that? All of these domestic tasks to do, things to put in places. And if you're very organized, that can be really smooth. But if you're not, if you've got an element of disorganized, or if something happens that knocks that and then it starts to snowball out of control, you can end up in quite a frantic state, like, with quite a messy home, even if that's not who you would have normally been. And then you end up in a crisis. I've got to see those people that sort of lose it as well. And as a lecturer, I got to see a lot of younger people starting their journey into a professional career of service, and their attitude towards education service users, people that would call 999, and the state of affairs as well. So it gave me a bit of balance. Being a primary school teacher kept me very, very occupied. 10-year-olds were my best friend for that year. It's quite fun though. Paramedicine gave me an insight to a broad amount of people's lives. And I suppose now doing events is a bit different. It was really interesting in Australia because the attitude that I experienced from Australian patients was slightly different. It might be because of the setting I was in. I was in the community and I was only seeing people if there was an incident, and they were generally trying to progress to something rather than I was being called to them. They were calling me. So obviously, if you're getting a phone call, I spoke to some other paramedics that were working for New South Wales. It's pretty similar in the UK and Australia. But in the community, it's slightly different. And that's where I got to see a wider spectrum of people and how people actually just want to get up and get on. So I actually saw someone have their first ever seizure at the top of an escalator. And I was saying to them, like, you do realize that you've had a seizure, and if you're not a known epileptic, anything could be going on in your brain, and you won't know unless you go to hospital to get a scan. This could be life-threatening, and you could die. And the guy's like, "No, I just want to go to work." Wow. I'm like, but if you had this seizure just like one step forward, you could have really injured yourself by going down this escalator. Nope, just wanted to go to work. And I'll never forget that, because I was like, oh, this is how Aussies are.
Yeah. She'll be right.
Yeah, literally. I was like, and off he goes. And subsequently, I did see him a few days after that as well, still walking, still sort of shuffling into work. And it gave me an interesting sort of perspective to try and see where people are going to be at their best, and what is best for people, and how do people do their best. And I think I met people through different things: work, uni, exercise. And every time, the people that I meet through exercise generally have a better mindset than people that I've met in any other space. You know, and it's not to say that anyone else has issues or different things, but it's just to say that when people are quite health focused, it gives them an extra clarity of thought. It gives them a different perspective. And it's just a perspective that I really resonate with. And I want to see other people reach that level of thriving. And I'd love to know how to help them get there. And I think in some cases it's partly economic and nutritional based. And then in some cases it is education. There was a big debate in the UK just the other day on the national radio, LBC, because one of the schools had offered to give children a television for attending school. So it's, if you attend and you get the best attendance policy, I don't know exactly how many of them they were giving out, but you would essentially win a television. And there was a big debate about why would they pick a television? It's really negative. Why not give them like a gym pass or a fitness pass? And there was debates about, well, would they want the gym pass? You know, because they have their own, you know, personalities and desires. They're probably not going to get out of bed for a gym pass, are they? So now we're in a situation where we're motivating children with incentives, which has always been the case. But I just wonder what those incentives will look like in the future. And if kids don't want to go to school, can we modernize education? Like, could it be virtual? Could we put on a Quest headset and give them access to the best teachers? This is part of what we wanted to look at Atomic Academia. Why are we having, you know, Sally, who hates maths, teach maths to children in primary school when, you know, they could go on with some Professor Quark in the US on a Quest headset, could be pre-recorded, could be an interactive AI, and they could learn through someone that's a lot more engaging with that particular topic and is able to dynamically approach it with them. But they could also learn it in a gamified manner at home. You know, is that the future? Possibly. And you know, I think we need to start looking at more modern and innovative ways to teach kids. If kids don't want to attend school, don't force them. Say, actually, because since we taught you all at home anyway over COVID, and we messed you up for 2 years by doing that, right? Because if you're 14 now and you're 16 and you've had 2 years when you were 12 at home being taught by homeschooling, and now they're like, no, you've got to come into school every day. you're confusing the kid now.
Yeah.
Right? That's not fair, because they've had a whole year at home, and now you're telling them, if you miss one day, you're going to fall so far behind. And they're just like, you guys are jokers. Like, I missed 2 years when I was in year 7. Like,
Absolutely.
I'd challenge that. If I was a kid, I would absolutely challenge that. You're not stupid. You'd be like, you just told us, the government told us to go home and stay at home for 2 years, and now you're telling us we have to be in every day. Like,
It's happened in the work world as well.
yeah,
As adults, we've got all these big companies, these big Fortune 500 companies like Apple, Dell, um, who have said, yes, you can work from home permanently, and then suddenly they'll come in and say, I've literally heard this secondhand from someone who works at one of these Fortune 500 companies. They've given them a week notice to come in full time again. People have built their lives around being at home. How can you do that?
yeah.
Like,
Home offices, everything.
yeah, everything. The they're looking after the kids. Obviously, there's no daycare, there's no babysitters because they're always at home, and so people have built their lives around this because that's what's happened, and that's what the government said. And then suddenly you give them the note, like a couple of days notice, and we think you can just move your life back to how it was 2 years ago. Like, no, the world's changed. And I think you raise a really good point. There are so many different ways of being able to facilitate education remotely or in different ways that suit the children. Because I've always thought this for a long time, ever since I've come out of school and university, is that school is not built for everyone. School is built for specific kids, and that traditional way of facilitating education is not, it's archaic. It needs to be changed. It needs to evolve. Like, I know teachers, and hearing about how school is, it's like, wow, it literally hasn't changed in like 20 years since I've been at school. How are we making any progress in the world if we're not changing the classroom? That's where it starts.
I'd say
So
it probably hasn't changed in even longer than that as
longer
well. You're
than that.
looking at maybe 40 to 60 years where education hasn't drastically changed. They've changed technology. They've gone from a chalkboard to a whiteboard to an interactive screen.
But snail pace. Snail
But
pace.
yeah, but no, the layouts might have changed slightly as well. So they would have had rows before where they're all fronting onto the teacher, Victorian style, and now they might do sort of community like based sessions, and let them work in teams and groups. There's a lot of work in the education space on making education. I did a conversation with one of our people for Atomic, an educationalist. She's far more into this than I am, Poppy. She knows the ins and outs of education. Fantastic lecturer, senior lecturer at the Open University now, in education, grand teacher and a mum. So obviously knows everything there could possibly be to know about kids, really. And seeing the outputs that they have, they talk to teachers about ways of engaging kids, ways of making education more interesting. The will is there from the people. However, because education is state controlled in most cases, there isn't the desire to adapt it. And the schools that are private, well, they're happy to make their money. They probably have changed the most because they move quite quickly with new innovations, but they still require the boys or girls to come in and follow that traditional model.
Mm.
It'd be interesting to see if like there is a new form of, there's kind of two methods of teaching. There's loads of methods, but there's the didactic teach, test, teach sort of thing. And then there's like a Montessori thing where they can pick up things and go around and do it as they please. And both of those have capacity to work in an online space. People do tuition, online quite a lot now. I don't see why there can't be a national TV program that is state school TV. 9 o'clock in the morning, they start a maths class. You're not going to get interaction with the teacher, but you're going to get activities. You could possibly find a way to make it interactive. Perhaps if they have tablets, that can be scanned into a central area and someone can overview it, or a computer, an AI can overview it. The technology is available now to make this possible. The political will doesn't seem to be there. If you've got a problem with truancy and people out of school, instead of trying to go, I'm going to find the parents, I'm going to do this, we're going to punish, punish, punish. We need to find a way to adapt.
Mm.
We need to say, okay, you're going to be at home. Well, actually, on YouTube at 9 o'clock is the Great British School. And you'll find a really good presenter who's a great public face, really fun on camera to keep those kids entertained and engaged.
Mm.
You'll have a network of people that are off school connected through a very different way. Maybe other people will watch it outside of that, but it's totally possible to digitize education.
Yeah.
And to make it sort of live, entertaining, engaging, and fun. And I think that's what you could do for kids that are not in school, rather than try and hunt them all down and punish them. I mean, the cost of actually, logging every kid that's not in school, sending it to a central database, sending inspectors and letters to the parents, sending out the fine, the administrative cost of all of that is surely higher than just creating a station and being like, look, if you're off school, tune into this. It doesn't matter if you're off sick, if you're off because you just don't feel like being in school, if you're off because you've got anxiety, because you're being bullied. Like, there's a whole range of reasons. Like, if you're being bullied and school is a terrifying place, you're not going to want to go. It doesn't matter if they say, we're going to find your parents. So it feels like you're being double punished, right? Not only do you not want to go to
double
the scary
fined,
place.
Yeah, got to be more flexible for sure. Sounds like maybe Atomic Academia can evolve into the digital broadcast.
It's more for the BBC to do. They've got a mandate to do it, but they just don't. There's educational TV, but they could actually have a structured educational program, and every country could do that to ensure that there's a minimum standard of education available for free for everyone. Right? I know they try and say, well, it is available, it's in school, but if you're getting pinched at the person that's sitting next to you and the teacher's too busy because there's a lot going on, anyway, I can't fix the whole system, but I can give us some things that might help, a few kids. And if the school TV hits only 100 kids per year, that's still 100 kids getting an education they weren't previously. So that would be something, right?
Absolutely. No, I love that. Bringing it back to physical health and what you've seen in the health space as a paramedic, obviously working in emergency healthcare, probably pretty high pressure, not only for the people that you are supporting, but also for yourself. So I'd love to get your 2 cents on how you've managed that. You mentioned work-life balance is really great in Australia. How did you manage that as a paramedic? And what sort of from what you've seen in society and on site, what sort of habits, techniques have helped you stay physically and mentally strong as a person?
Yeah, I mean, resilience is important for everyone in all walks of life. And I think that even going through what I do, I look at some jobs now and I just think, I don't know how they do it. And even some jobs that I would have loved as a kid have evolved, right? So when I was a kid growing up, I was looking at policing. And obviously, young boys always seem to like police for some reason. Just like, yeah, I'm the police. We all have a bit of fun with that, running around pretending to be cops. And I thought for a little period of time, actually, this would be great. But probably since maturing a little bit and looking at how the police are treated and then their situation, salary, and everything that goes alongside it, I was like, that could be really tough, particularly the sort of physical abuse, the violence, and just small things like someone spitting at you and running away just because you're in that uniform. That kind of stuff is tricky. Now, for me, with paramedicine, it's always nice because people are always very happy to see me. Now, it's not the case for all people that work in that industry. Sometimes people are really aggressive and angry, and paramedics get assaulted, and healthcare workers, in fact, get assaulted on a daily basis. And that's absolutely horrible. It shouldn't happen. Healthcare workers only want to help you. They don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
They want to help you. If you don't want their help, just say go away and just leave them alone. They're not gonna force you to get help. They just want to support you. So you don't need to attack them. Just leave them, or just tell them to leave you alone. But from the stuff that I've seen, so no one's brought physical violence or been horrible to me. I've had a colleague who was a female colleague who was aggressively pursued, and it wasn't very nice. Um, so I haven't got experience from that side of it. But in terms of tricky jobs and situations that impact you, obviously I'm a human being, and if I see something distressing, it's going to impact me, and I'm going to deal with that, deal with those emotions. For me, it's always been running, long term, actually getting out on the road, focusing on myself and my body. Sometimes I do cycle into thoughts, but it allows them to process. So I might cycle into the thought. Usually I try and keep my thoughts clear, but I let it come through and I'll just process it, and then it'll shake off, and then there'll be another thought, and then I'll be able to sort of run through it. And eventually by the end of that, hopefully it will be off my mind. Not always, but hopefully by the end of it will be off my mind. Training outside of that has also worked really well. I think so I'm focusing on training myself to a point of failure, or to a point where I need to try and make myself better, or convince myself that I'm going to make myself better. That's when I just forget about whatever I'm thinking about, and I'm focused. And that to me is really, really relieving. I used to do a lot of yoga. So that's why I said Sydney was the best time. So I would get up, I would be able to do the run. I would then be able to get to the gym in between shifts. I'd be able to get to F45, sometimes at lunchtime, sometimes after. And then I'd also be able to do yoga in the evening. And I think that to me just completed my whole day. Now, realistically, that's not possible for everyone. That's maybe 3 or 4 hours of training. With a kid, really tricky, because your whole day sort of explodes. Yeah. And then it's if you actually want that time, you're going to have to take it from your sleep, because that's where it's coming, because all the rest of the day is busy. That is probably my newest thing that is the biggest distraction. I can almost forget all troubles when I'm with a baby. It's a completely different experience. I absolutely adore being with newborns. They are so much fun. In terms of outside of fitness, I've got a few things that I used to do a bit of gaming, just as a way to escape for a little while. Try to learn things as well. So artistic stuff, whether it's painting, sculpting, piano, stuff like that. And good food. Ultimately, good food. Yeah, I don't underestimate really tasty, nutritious meal as a way of resetting yourself for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
That's certainly a great way to reset. But also, for me, one of the things that's always calmed me down is being out on the water. Whether it's on a paddleboard, in a dinghy, in a raft, something about just going out on the water for a bit and just being out there. I don't know how to describe it. I could just go out on a paddleboard. I don't even have to really be paddling. I could be sitting on it. But just being on the water, for me, there's something about the ions and the atmosphere.
Being in nature, yeah. Just being wrapped around like a blanket.
Yeah, it's really soothing. And then if that's sort of the day-to-day stuff. If I really, really want to get away, it's one of these sort of much better adventure sort of things. And essentially these are like group package holidays where you go on an orienteering expedition. So it's like, we're going to go kayaking in the fjords, or we're going to go hiking a mountain here, or one of them's go to Everest base camp, or hike some Himalayan mountains in Nepal. Like all of these kind of things, absolutely breathtaking experiences. They are what I sort of live for. And I recognize that when I do stuff like that, I'm like, the world is so beautiful. There's so much beauty in the world, and despite there might have been some deprivation or really dark period that I was in, helping someone else through a really dark time or through a tragic time. Particularly RTCs can be very, very tragic, with some big losses.
What's an RTC?
Road traffic collision.
Oh, yeah.
So, depending on what's hit what, it'll make a difference to the injury sustained and the impact and things. There's a whole range of things we call mechanism of injury, and that's all the events that lead up to it, particularly if it's a big trauma like a crash. But they can be really, really hard to deal with life-changing injuries. But there is a lot of beauty in the world as well.
Mm.
And there's a lot of good things to do in this world. And I think my big message is there's a lot of people that are in a place now where they're in probably quite a dark place where they're feeling there's not much hope. Don't give up, because if you wait long enough, you'll be able to find something and you will see that beauty of the world and the universe again. You will find it. It's out there, and it's sometimes hidden behind like a rose leaf, right? You'd have to turn that leaf over to see it. And there you go. There's the butterfly, or there's the ladybug. Because I think slowing down has helped me recognize when there's more beauty around me as well. You know, to actually stop and smell the roses, they say, right? It's an old saying. And that's where I think I'm on a very similar wavelength to you, as in I would love to go up to northern Queensland and live out there with that kind of environment, that kind of pace of life, that kind of nature, and those kind of activities that you can do around as well, right? So I was mentioning some of those hiking things. All of that is available in Queensland. You've got a wide range of adventure sports and hiking activities. A lot of it's for free as well, supported by the government, which is incredible.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully put, man. Thanks for sharing that message. I think a lot of people will definitely take that to heart. So yeah, that was really, really nicely put. And yeah, look, I think this is another recurring theme, is finding people who are like-minded, who are on the same wavelength as you. That's been one of the most important things that I've learned, I think, especially when you're talking about physical health as well. Physical health is hard to improve if you're hanging around with people that don't actually value or want to reconnect with their health. It's almost impossible because you're like you're trying to run against a brick wall almost. Like no one's coming with you. So I think, yeah, finding people who are similar to you in that sense is really going to make that change. And as you said so beautifully, they're going to smell the roses with you and turn that leaf and find,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's it. That's what I've been looking for.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of life, isn't it? And I suppose that's one of the great things about running is there's an amazing community behind it. Very sort of grounded, sensible. Not everyone, obviously, you can't speak for everyone, but the majority of people that go to run clubs, quite grounded, sensible people. They're up early, which is always nice to see. I'm much more of an. I'm not very good at it. My younger self would be like, "No, you're not." But my soul is much more of an early person than a night person, although it doesn't always work out like that for me, because sometimes I end up staying up later and then that knocks into the next day. But my soul wants to be up 5 a.m., 6 a.m., out bright and early. Of course, that varies in the UK with the weather. But overall, that's one of the things that really helps is getting up, for me, getting up early and going to bed early and having a really good circadian rhythm around the natural light, and the natural clock we're supposed to have actually does make a difference. Doing night shifts is actually really detrimental.
Absolutely. I've heard a lot recently about that circadian rhythm and the hours between 10 and 2. And those are the hours biologically that actually are the most restorative hours of your sleep. So after 2 a.m., sorry, actually nothing's really happening. You're just sort of sleeping. You're dreaming a little bit, but your body's actually not restoring at that time. So even if you can get between 10 and 2, that's the most important sleep that you need for your body. And I think and I imagine it'd be so hard to do that in healthcare because your life's being, driven around a roster at all hours of the day. So yeah,
Not
quite
just that, it's
admirable,
parenting as
man.
well.
And
Parenting.
yeah, imagine that. Like, oh, it's so admirable. Yeah, to be able to do that and
um,
serve and almost sacrifice your health in some ways. Yeah.
I mean, hats off to anyone doing it. I've moved on like now, but I still do events and help out every now and then. But I recognise the detriment that it did to me over time, and I did service. So I've done nearly 10 years of it. I think it's always got to be self-limiting, right? You have to say, if you're going to do something, is it possible to sustain a paramedic career for 40 years? It's possible, but you will want to be really careful about the shifts you start taking after the first 10, right? Because I think there's a lot of research that shows people that do shifts live less and they suffer more. And I'd rather not live a life suffering stress and less than necessary, because I'm doing something that would help other people. And I don't know whether there's something we can do in terms of restructuring the way shifts work. So perhaps across they have more staff and less people, or you do less night shifts. I know it would be harder to do and it would be costly, but if that's what it takes to have a better society, is it beneficial? I would say so, but I don't know whether people look at, statistics like that when they do state and budget planning at government levels. I wish they did.
I'd love to touch a little bit, just finally, before we wrap up, on the running side of things, because you mentioned running is a fantastic technique to, improve your physical health and cleanse all those negative emotions that you might be holding or thoughts. I remember we've been for a few runs last year, and I remember you were wearing the barefoot shoes. My question is, are you still wearing them? Are you still using them? And can you tell us a bit about the barefoot shoes and the idea behind them?
Yeah, so I actually know exactly where that came from as well, the barefoot. So I do still wear them, although not all the time, because for me, the sometimes I'm barefoot, completely barefoot. And sometimes I'm wearing something so in Canada, I was wearing things called soft mocks, which are like a sandal, because it was really hot this summer. And the barefoot shoes that I had were quite hot as well. So I didn't want to wear them necessarily, because they're sort of like just a rubber sole, the Vibram ones. I swear by barefoot training, and I actually swear by it as a principle and concept. I don't know if it's right, because trainer companies have invested millions and millions, if not billions, into trainers understanding the sole, understanding the arch. And when I was in Australia, I went to see a podiatrist who looked at my gait and my walking and recommended a sole type, midsole, rather than a thicker heel sole, to change the way that I strike the ground. Because the way I was heel striking at the moment was negative long term, and this is very minor stuff, right? Most people wouldn't look at this, but I was getting a niggling ache in my knee, and I was thinking, something's a bit off with my stride, so I need to look at what's causing it. So I had a stride analysis and all of this done, and they came out with the midsole resolution and told me to get rid of my Under Armour shoes and only use the Axis ones I had, and just generally to walk like that as well. And then I read a book called Exercise by Dr. Daniel Lieberman, a Harvard professor. I actually based a lot of my paramedic work and teachings on not this book, but on How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger, a medical doctor that talks about nutrition in the US. And he's got another book on that, about cooking his foods as well. Again, like Game Changers, it's all about veganism. And I'm not a vegan per se, but I understand the premise of plant-based diet being the base diet for humans and being important to eat that. So Daniel Lieberman looked at, again, it comes down to longevity. And for me, when it comes down to science and longevity, the main thing, you are patient zero. You're your first patient. If you don't look after and this is the principle I have with other healthcare professionals. If they don't look like they're looking after themselves, I don't really know if I want to be treated by them, unless they have a really specific subspecialism that is like, okay, I understand you are a genius in this area, but if you're just a GP and you're going to try and tell me how to live my life and you're very, very unhealthy yourself, I'm probably not going to. You might have the knowledge and you might be saying what's right, but there's something in my brain that won't accept that advice.
I couldn't agree more. That is something that's really just hit me in the past few years, like going to see a GP and just looking at them. Why am I taking advice from you?
And right, their situation's different, right? Yeah. Because they're probably stressed, they're working all day, they're in a sedentary environment. There are factors to explain that situation. But if you can't put yourself into optimal health as a healthcare professional, how can a patient be sure that what you're saying is correct? Because there's a lot of healthcare professionals that don't know the right answers, right? And even to the extent of doctors, a lot of them don't know, but they'll just go with the best guess. And, okay, they have knowledge and experience to make that best guess, but that doesn't mean they know what they're telling you is actually factually accurate.
Well, they're practicing
But
what they preach.
or they're practicing it, yeah. And to loop that into the barefoot thing, so Daniel Lieberman um, did the book called Exercised, and he looked at, well, why is it in the Anglo-American world and in Western cultures are people assuming that because you get old, you become frail? Frailty and aging just comes hand in hand, right? I know I lectured on this quite a bit as well as in paramedicine. You do not necessarily have to become frail just because you're old. You don't have to have sarcopenia and start to have muscle degradation on a major level just because you are aging. It does start to happen. Your muscles do get tired and they do start to break down. However, it can be counteracted quite well through exercise. And it doesn't even have to be a great deal of exercise, right? It has to be exercises that you just, for some reason, stop doing. And I don't know what happens. People stop squatting to the ground and getting up.
Mm.
So
Using
because
their
we're sitting in
knees.
chairs all the time,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like
And
it's
then
bending
because of
down
that,
rather than.
what happens? Quadriceps get weaker, so they're not able to then get up from that lower part up from the ground. Hamstrings weaken, so again, you're not able to get up if you go too low. That sort of astergrass they call it in training. But when you get down, if you can't get back up from that sort of position, let alone jump, that's the first stage of not being able to get up from the floor, isn't it? And then, of course, that will then snowball. I've used that word a few times, but this is what happens in life. If you leave something, it will grow, or it will snowball, or it will get out of control. And if you stop training something, it will stop working. And he looked at all of these different people, like why do in hunter gatherer tribes do hunter gatherers not suffer with this? There's no one, there's no one going around in a mobility scooter in a hunter gatherer tribe. It's not happening. You've got these elders that are sitting down with the young men and they're able to get up. They might not be as fast, but they're able to get up and get around. And the same happened in the Caribbean. I was like, oh, actually, in the Caribbean, Auntie Belle was like 94 years old and she's walking up the hill marching, right? Because there's no mobility scooters. You're out, you're doing stuff, you're sweeping, you're down and you're moving. And I recognized it happened a lot. One of the big call outs in ambulance is people that are on the floor that can't get up in their elderly age. And it's not their fault. They didn't have the same education we have now to know, train. Weight training in elderly years to maintain muscle mass helps ensure that you don't end up unable to move certain areas of your body.
Mm.
And then linking back to barefoot, that's the very first foundation of ensuring that you build complete stability within your leg muscles, all of them. There's a lot of smaller areas, ligaments, tendons, and other areas that all combine together to ensure that you get sort of stability with walking, and the ability to sort of move around nimbly and actively. And since doing it, since switching to it, without doing so, I mean, you remember from F45, I would pistol squat on possibly be able to get one or two out on a weight. I haven't actually done any squats or any weight training for years, actually, since being back here, because I don't like the local gym. We actually left the one you came to because
Yeah, the one we went to.
we're done.
Intense.
It's too expensive and it's not good enough. But I'm able to pistol squat now based on just training in those alone and maybe doing a little bit of mobility. So my training's decreased, yet my capacity and my ability and my functional movement has improved. I'm not faster. I'm still not going to be able to do what's that? Supermans or super jumps really quickly, but um, I evolved essentially. I grew. My stability and my balance improved. My posture improved. Um, so
That's incredible.
and logically, I just started thinking about it. I'm a very logical person. I love logic. Everything has to make a logical sense to me, and I will change my opinion if you can present me an argument with enough logical reasoning and a little bit of evidence that doesn't have enough evidence in contrary, like to counter it. And I'm probably going to say I accept that because I'm not going to argue about it. Like you present me something with logical facts, and I'll say I'll accept it. And the logic behind barefoot was humans have been around for millennia. Trainers have been around for about 200 years. Trainers have seen people end up with worse outcomes with the lower limbs than before we had trainers. So
That's incredible, isn't it?
why has that happened? So we've put in all of this support, and yet we're worse off now than ever before.
Mm,
And it makes sense, doesn't it? Our bodies are naturally designed to walk around and to move,
yeah.
and to sort of be able to do things.
And another aspect of that, which I've learned and been reading a lot about, is grounding, and the fact that they're using soles, like leather soles, in those trainers. And that has actually severed the connection between your body and the ground, which has also cascaded into inflammation problems that happen in the body, in the joints. Not only, we're not only talking about the impact that you're having on running and your feet touching the ground, but also, and strengthening them, but also just the connection between the ground and the body. And that's a whole separate topic. But that just reminded me of the fact that there's a leather sole that stopped the electrical flow of energy between the ground and your body, and that is causing inflammation and has added on to these negative health effects that we're getting from wearing shoes in the past 200 years.
You know what? That's actually quite fascinating, isn't it? I think we've seen a bit of a trend for it as well, because it's not just me in my barefoot training. I've noticed some other people doing sort of the half marathon in Cambridge in barefoot. One woman did it with no shoes at all. So, like you say,
Mm,
there, absolutely nothing. That's a bit trickier, obviously, because if you're out in the streets, you do have to contend with whatever is on the floor.
glass.
Yeah, glass, nails, rusty stuff, like even little stones hurt. So that's why I prefer the shoes. But I was like, hats off to her. And then I think you probably notice it if you go to the gym, that actually a lot more women started taking off their shoes for their training.
Mm,
Um, and because obviously they do a lot of leg training, and you'd probably just notice like, oh, there's shoes. Oh, that's because I do. Like, oh, there's shoes there. And I started being like, why are all these people taking off their shoes at the gym now? And it just became a bit of a fad or a bit of a trend, I'm
mm.
guessing, in the fitness industry. And people have learned that actually, to get full engagement, having a trainer isn't good for
Is
you.
an impediment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing all that. I love the barefoot shoes. I think I'm getting on that train soon. I'm curious. I'm really curious. I might buy
You,
some.
you
I'll have to
you
ask
should
you.
give it a go.
Yeah.
You should give it a go. Maybe not. You don't have to go for the full Vibram ones with the toe.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. The toes.
you can get there's like Vivo Barefoot as well that do a really good one.
Yeah.
I got some cheaper ones as well, like Hobby Bear. Um, they're a bit more like plimsolls though. They actually do have a soft lining, which
Mm.
doesn't quite give you the tactile feel. It has to be. I think if it's a good barefoot shoe, it has to be from one of the major manufacturers that have done research into actually making it a proper barefoot shoe, not just a slim sole.
Mm.
Because I think there's a difference.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because
Sounds good.
Vibram, if you look at their technology, they say that they have uh, they have looked at the technology, and basically, I'll see if I can find a shoe actually, because they're quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go.
Just before you go.
For sure.
So essentially, on the base there, these are completely worn out because I did too much running. But you can see on the base there, each of these is not for grip; it's actually for sensation. So you actually can feel the ground.
Ah. Okay. Yeah. Because that makes sense. Yeah. You can feel each toe can feel the connection to the ground essentially.
Each toe, the ball of your foot,
Yeah.
the heel of your foot, because the brilliance of it is you notice when you're walking on something different.
Mm.
So I can tell if I'm on tarmac or if I'm on concrete or if I'm on grass or if I'm on when I'm in my trainers, I'm like walking on a cloud, like oh, especially if it's like hockers, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is beautiful. But actually, I can tell if I'm on cobblestone ground. If the ground's uneven, if it's a mud track. It's actually, like you say, not just electrical impulses, but there is other stimuli that come through that sense of feeling.
Yeah,
And
tactility from different textures and different surfaces. I love that, and also that just made me think that could make you feel a bit more present as you're running or as you're walking. You're constantly in connection with your senses, with your touch, as you're walking through. So it might bring you some more presence and energy. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. All right, I think you've sold me, man. I'm gonna buy some. I'll be finding out where you buy yours, and we'll get a pair.
I'll definitely, I'll set you up because yeah, I'll tell you the best ones definitely for me are those ones I just showed you there
Yeah.
with the totes. They are absolutely brilliant. And that sole maker
Mm.
that makes them, they actually make soles for boots as well. They're a very popular manufacturer of the actual sole. So
Oh,
they're probably my favorites.
amazing. Appreciate that. Well, one final question before we jump into the bonus wrap up speed round. Looking into the future, what excites you most about where your journey's taking you in the world of health and education, or just your life in general?
Yeah, so for me, I think I now, because I've left academia, I openly do paramedicine as a contractor. So whenever I do an event, that's specifically to that event, and I'm a free agent now. Started an online business, and I've become an online streamer, massive streamer in a small platform. So I'm not that big, but I'm a mid-sized player in a small platform, which is great, right? It's rather than being like an amoeba in TikTok. So started that off, and that's given me the dynamic thing to be this sort of new digital nomad and have potential. So if that's successful, and so far it's so good, but if it's successful or more successful, and I can grow, that will take me to Australia for sure. Because if I'm doing well here in this market, it will be brilliant over there. It will be absolutely exceptional, and yeah, I'd love to do it. The other side of it is I've determined that a career like we just discussed isn't the process for me. I don't want to do 40 years at a certain amount of K with the hope of getting a gold watch at the end and a pat on the back and a pension plan that might be worthwhile, because I've not seen growth that I would want to with that career. In fact, if anything, I've seen being on those in that sort of salaried role, I was more stuck. And I think I mean, I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've been through the Richard Kawasaki thing and the whole quadrant and where you want to be in the quadrant. Do you want to be an employee forever, or do you want to be an entrepreneur, an investor? Where you got to get to? Small business obviously makes money.
I love the rich dad stuff.
Yeah,
So cool you're into that
too. Some like a lot of it makes a lot of sense. Now I know that the guy's a bit more controversial. He's been in a few scandals and stuff, but the actual principle of it makes sense. If you are working for money, it's fixed. You're selling your day, your 12 hours a day. You're only ever going to make that. That's it. Take it away. If it's a passion, enjoy it, love it, and live that life. If it's a job, you have to think about how long you're going to spend doing that and what your true path is going to be. And I think I'm sort of at that stage now where I'm working out mine. I've decided, actually, I've done a career, I've served people, I've had a great career. I'm going to continue with Atomic. I think that's really important to have a way of communicating educational ideas to the world. It's great what we've achieved so far, and that's going to be something that's going to be hopefully ever present and maybe even bigger in the future and play a bigger role in the education of humanity if it can get funding. The other side of it, the small business, the games, I absolutely love hosting. I enjoy being a host, and I think that would be probably my pathway for a little while. It's a bit of entertainment, a bit of income generation, have a bit of fun, and enjoy life. Because, as Eddie Murphy says, 75 years. 75 years is all you get. And if you think about it like that, 75 winters, 75 summers, 75 Christmases. Not a lot of time, is it?
I've seen that video. Yeah, puts life into perspective. That's for sure.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I've had a fair few Christmases and stuff already, so there's not many to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you get to a point where you're like, oh, actually, that clock is ticking on everyone, isn't it? Quite rapidly. And we just mentioned how quickly 5 years went. Another 5 years goes, then another 5 years after that, and you're claiming your pension.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love that, man. Yeah, I'm really excited for you, and I hope the growth works out, and I really look forward to seeing you in Australia when you move there eventually.
Oh, thanks, bro. I think it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah, yeah. We're gonna build a community. It's gonna be awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Man.
definitely.
Well, if you've got some time, I'd love to ask you some bonus wrap-up questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, number one. What's your number one guilty pleasure?
Yeah, I suppose number one guilty pleasure. Ah, do I tell you? Might be a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Nice. One
It
book
might
that.
be a McDonald's. I don't want it to be though. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be, but sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey, man, that's the point of this question. We're all human.
yeah,
One book that changed your life.
yeah. Okay, so book that changed my life is definitely exercise. I mentioned it just now. I would have said, see, if you asked this at different times in my life, it would have been different. It would have been different answers. So the first time, I would have said probably that Dwayne Johnson book. You know, learning about The Rock's life, his sort of humble beginnings. He's a third generation wrestler, which means he's practically born into superstardom. But his humble beginnings and how he sort of made that work at 16, 17, that was a brilliant book for me. And as you saw, it led to a gap year. And so that was a book that changed my life then. But now the mythology has happened really with How Not to Die, the base diet, the understanding of actually this is human diet. We wouldn't be giving animals diets that are outside of their remit or UPFs. Why has it been allowed to happen to people?
Wow. Good point. Biggest life lesson you've learnt to date?
Don't wait, I think is the big one for me. Don't wait. So it's like the big thing is people have always said, oh, you can do that later, put it off, you know, and ultimately putting off having a kid, for example, I'm now looking at my life expectancy and my life in relation to hers and how I'll be at certain milestones for her. And uh, it's not become easier. I mentioned it before. They said, "Don't wait. You've always got the chance to have children. Just enjoy yourself for now." So we did that. We followed that advice. Oh, now it's super expensive to have childcare or to even have a child or to even have the accommodation to have a child. So that changed rapidly within sort of 10, 15 years, which is insane. To think if I had had a kid when straight out of high school, she would be like 14, 15 now. And my life probably wouldn't be much different, but I would have avoided all of that initial setup cost that is now ridiculously high. The same with buying property, right? Oh, don't buy a house. You can wait, go around, rent, and enjoy your life. Now, obviously, dependent on needs, you need to have the finances to be able to do it. But don't buy a house, rent, have the freedom and flexibility to travel around. That's great. Prices just went up astronomically. Now you can't buy. You missed the boat. Oh, okay. So every time I've decided to wait on an opportunity, it's always gone poorly for me.
Mm.
Now, it might not be the case for everyone. And of course, you don't want to be haphazard and jump into things without thinking about it, particularly if you're an impulsive person like I can be. They recommend you always sleep on it. But if I could give myself any advice, just don't wait.
Beautiful. Where can people reach out to you and follow you on your journey?
So I am in a live stream now, pretty much 12 hours a day during the week. So 7 till 7, which means you'll be able to capture me a little bit in Oz as well. And we're just about to introduce the host cam. So like you're seeing me now, I'll be on the host cam chatting away on the stream. So that will be online 12 till 12. You'll be able to find that on Whatnot. You can go on Yardmin on any social media and you'll be able to see us there. Of course, if you're an academic type and you're an educational, then there's Atomic Academia. It's pretty big now. You can just Google that. We've got a YouTube, we've got a website, but there won't be as much action on that because obviously I'm streaming now. So yeah, the best place to reach me is on Yardmin.
Amazing. Thanks, man. Obviously, I'll put all the links into the description of the episode so everyone can find you and follow you on your amazing, interesting journey.
Oh, and I have Twitter. I have a personal Twitter as well, so and a personal Instagram. So
great. We'll put those in too. Well, I guess, man, it's been awesome to chat to you. Really appreciate you carving the time for this. I know you're
Oh,
busy on the streams, but yeah, it's been really wholesome. Really appreciate you, man. And yeah, obviously we're leaving the UK soon, so coming back to Australia. So hopefully we can touch base when you guys move to Australia or visit. That'll be awesome. Yeah, to reconnect.
yeah, that would be really good, bro. And I hope you've got enough content or something to use there in
Oh,
that hodgepodge
absolutely.
of stuff. It'll have to be. I appreciate the editing because even doing something like this, right? So I know
Yeah.
you've gone into this full time, and that is awesome, by the way, because
Oh,
content
thanks.
production tricky and challenging.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say is I know just how much effort goes into post production and editing when you're putting something
Yeah.
together. Even a podcast, right? It takes hours and hours
Oh yeah.
of post. Um, and if you're going to put in jingles and stuff like that, hours. So I do appreciate,
Oh,
I do
thanks, man.
appreciate it, and I know what you're going to go through. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I love it.
good on
It's
you,
it's
and
awesome.
it's good. Going with this message. I think it's a great idea. We do need more wholesome thinking. Um, we need more enjoyable things. So if you do join Yard Mint, bear in mind there are elements of risk to it. You might end up getting a gram of silver, but you might also end up like one of the players did, coming in and doing one spin for £9 and taking a gram of gold. Like that's the kind of
Wow. Incredible.
that's the madness that happens right at the
Possibility.
Yard.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and appreciate your time. Appreciate you, man, as a friend of mine. Do you have a final message for the listeners today?
Yeah, I think the main thing is stick with it. Whatever your goal is, and if you really want it, just stick with it because you can do it. You can do what you set your mind to. It can be done.
I love that. Thanks for sharing, man. I hope something resonated with you in this conversation and that you've taken a practical tip or two to set you on your wholesome way. If you liked what you heard, please give The Wholesome Way a follow on your podcast app so you know exactly when each weekly episode is ready to stream. And if you would like to be super generous with helping me grow the podcast, click the share button and send it via an Instagram story, a DM, or a WhatsApp message to someone in your family or close friends who would truly relate with the themes, ideas, and practical tips in this episode. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today and for joining me on this incredible journey. Stay wholesome.